in just about 1 minute. Again, like Sean said, we've got a poll up. I'm curious to see the rock stars, and they love it. That are really aggressive in the sales arena, that enjoy doing cold calling is, as we're going to see, it is a lost art. And we want to hear from you guys too in the chat section. The one thing that Sean and I never want to portray is the fact that we have all the answers. We believe in peer-led conversations and sharing. So this is going to be a good part or good place for you as the rock stars, some best practices and peer-led practices. So don't be shy. Make sure that you guys chime in about the things that are working from you. And of course, we're thick-skinned. If you think we're full of, be willing to share that too. So.
All right, and we are live on Facebook as well for some of you watching over on my personal channel. I'm going to go ahead and put this poll up real quick for you guys to see the results. But a lot of you rejection and not knowing what to say were some of the most common answers. So we'll definitely be talking about those as well. So it's a big common answer, the fear of rejection. And, it's definitely something difficult to overcome, but we're definitely going to, dig into that a little bit. And really, it's about getting in the right mindset of going into a cold call with your expectation, and what type of research you need to be doing and things like that. So we're going to cover all that today. So if you are just joining us, go ahead and put your name and where you're from. A lot of you from around the country. Excited to see so many of you in here today.
All right, guys, and it looks like we're coming up on 11:05, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I'll introduce and this presentation. My name is Eddie Green. I'm the VP of Sales for Tier Level Digital Marketing. Also to have a big background in restoration as a former direction business for a large Serpro operation. So very versed in all kinds of sales, everything from dental to tools and home interior gifts, decor, and accessories, and just pretty much everything in between. So that's how I kind of cultivated a lot of the curriculum that we present is based on just lots and lots. 25 years. So this is I'll turn it over to Sean so he can introduce himself, and then we'll get started.
Yeah, so I'm the founder and CEO of Tier Level Digital Marketing. My background is in the restoration industry, working on the corporate level and franchise level. With Eddie, we built a team that grew a business from 3 to 14 plus million in just a few years. So, cold calling was a huge resource that we dominated, or a huge tactic that we had to, really overcome and dominate to grow our business in a market here in Oklahoma, which is different around the country. I mean, some markets are more saturated, but being in one of the disaster capitals of the world, it's definitely, there was a lot of cutthroat competition, and how we broke that ice and how we cut through that clutter is a lot about what we're going to talk about today. So we're very excited about this topic. It's been a very popular topic. Many people registered for this, so we're excited to get started.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, Sean. It is Sean and I have always had a great synergy working together. And I appreciate the fact that whenever I left the restaurant industry, that he was one of the first phone calls that I got. And, this translates even into what I do. But let's go ahead and kind of, before we even jump into the slides, I want you to, those of you that said that, you don't really know what to say, or the cold calling really kind of scares you, I want you to ask yourself, are you a marketer at heart, or are you a salesperson at heart? Because they are two totally different entities. If you're really all about the branding and warming up relationships, but have a problem being able to be put into new situations, overcoming and asking for the business, you may need to reevaluate what it is that your role is within the organization, and have some discussions with your supervisor, or it just airs the fact that you haven't been developed correctly to feel confident in going out. Because I am going to tell you, the topic of today's webinar is the art of the cold call, and it really is to be able to do this correctly. But my question, and Sean and I share the same sentiment, is there really such thing as a cold call with all of the digital information that we have out there in today's market space? Do you really feel like you have to walk in cold anymore? And Sean and I will tell you unequivocally, no. I don't believe there is such a thing as a cold call anymore. And this may increase your comfort level in being able to walk into a facility. So a lot of you guys may be doing cold calling the old school way, which is you're pulling up outside of an inn, and you are branded all over the place, which could immediately create walls. There's some give and take on whether or not you should walk in branded like uniform shirt and business cards in hand with branded merchandise in your hand. That there's give and take as to whether or not that can be an effective way. But you realize that if the gatekeepers company representation, there's going to be walls go up immediately that you're going to have to overcome. I personally always dressed exactly the way I am right now. I didn't even wear a name tag whenever I would go in to go do it, because I wanted them guessing. I wanted to catch them off guard. But like I said, I had to overcome some things too. I have my gauges, I'm all tattooed, and I live in a very conservative state. So, I had to kind of dress the part a little more. And in the summertime, this was brutal. I'm going to tell you right now, it was awful. But I chose to be tattooed and pierced and all those kinds of things. So I think secondly, the used car salesman technique. I don't mean any disrespect to used car salesmen, but if you look over at the door knockers and the people like that, they intimidate a lot of people, and they don't want to deal with them. The boiler room sales mentality, where you're walking in and asking for the one call close and trying to market your services onto these people as opposed to pulling them to you. This is something that I actually learned from Sean, and I love his analogies when it comes to push and pull marketing. Sean, you want to elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, so when you think of marketing and sales, you really have to understand the push versus pull technique. And what that really looks like is, a lot of salespeople, because I get tagged by them on the phone every day, or they come into my office and they're just pushing their service and their brand and what they do on me. And it's a huge turnoff. And when you look at push versus pull, how are you pulling them into you? Are you asking questions? Are you asking scenario type questions where you can get them talking? If you're pushing, they're not really giving them an opportunity to talk, except for them putting a wall up and pushing back on you to get you away. When you're pulling them in by asking them questions, and they start talking about their business, when they start talking about their needs, that's when you start to really build on that sales cycle, which a lot of people don't understand. So you have your pre-call planning, your actual approach, your consultation needs analysis. Before you even begin presenting, you've got to make sure you ask the questions so you know what you can present with your business and how you can align those to their needs. Too many times, look at dating. You don't go on a first date and start bragging about yourself and how awesome you are and things like that. And the opposite sex is going to be extremely turned off by that. So you really have to kind of put yourself into that mindset that customers are no different. That if you do that to them, they are going to shut you out. And that's why you're going door to door and running these routes throughout the day and not seeing the results or not seeing the business. You're not providing educational value. And until you learn how to pull them in, you're going to get the same results, because it's going to be nothing where, you just have to understand that. Am I being pushy or am I actually being engaging? And when you get to that point, you will see tremendous results from that.
I totally agree. And what a lot of people have the biggest problem and fear with is that they don't make it right. And if you walk in and they automatically know that you were there coming unannounced, and let's just go ahead and go to that next little bullet point, which is the gatekeepers. The gatekeepers hold job is, you know, so it's either they're going to give you reasons to why you're not going to get to either the COI, which, you know, if you're not familiar with that term, that's a center of influence, or the CEO of the problem. And talk a little bit about that here in a second. They're either going to fight you from getting there, or they're going to give you whatever excuse they need to get away from you. And that's why people have such trepidation and automatic gatekeeper, and now your nerves are turning, your stomach is turning, and we're going to talk about, you know, the majority. You know, Sean and I spend a lot of time with restoration companies across the United States and in with sales professionals, and they all do the same thing. And, you know, occasionally we are surprised by seeing the really good ones that really shock us to go out there and go do something different than what they've ever than what you've ever seen. There's two things that need to happen in the new school way, and without jumping ahead, is you need to be memorable, and there needs to be differentiation between you and so if you walk in completely branded, you've got your business card in your hand, and you just walk in and say, "Hi, I need to speak to the director of facilities," what do you think the gatekeeper's perception of you is? Nobody ever realizes that, because the majority of people that I see go out and present, I'll sit back, I'll be quiet, and I'll evaluate, and I see the true definition of insanity throughout the country, doing the same thing over and over and over, expecting a different result, and that doesn't happen. And then a lot of you guys may be using, or the old, maybe you're not, are still using old school selling techniques. And this is a new age. We know that now. More importantly, if you guys attended our webinar on virtual selling, you know, you've got to be more creative at ways to be able to get in front of people. So let's talk about the new ways versus the old ways. Cold calling today. Well, I'm gonna spend a lot of time and involve Sean on this for pre-call planning, because Sean is a huge advocate of this as well. But if you're not really familiar with pre-call planning, or pre-call planning at a very high level, I want to make sure that you guys understand that, because it literally can make or break time whenever you walk in. How many of you guys, you know, have currently created top 10 and top 25 lists? Are they recurring? Now, here's the deal. I'm going to share this experience, and I'm not going to this because a lot of respect, but for this person, but also too, I see this happen all the time, even with my business development people that I was managing. You know, they have a top 10 list, and a top 25 list, but know nothing about them. You know, and in a minute and one phone call, you know, I had when they were founded, who the hierarchy was, who the COI that I needed to be in touch was, where they're, how many locations they had, and we're going to explain the why I need to know those things as we get in. Your CRM tools, how are you documenting? Are you documenting as such that a total stranger could come in behind you and pick up where you left off if you leave the organization? Why is that important in cold calling today? Because a lot of times you're not going to get to that final closing meeting off of the first meeting, and you need to be documenting everything. So out of the hundreds of people that you meet, that meeting and the next meeting that you have with them, what did you talk about? So that you can, because you're not going to remember what happened a month ago or 6 months ago. Are you employing any type of strategy in the way that you're attacking it, or you just feel like that you're all over the place? And we'll talk a little bit about that. What organizations are you involved in? Are there multiple restoration vendors in there and you really don't feel like you can do anything? Where else could you spread your worth around with what's the path of least resistance? Are you talking from referral base? You know, do you know people who know the prospective target that you're going after? You know, is there anybody in either of those organizations or current relationships that you have an in to the place you're trying to cold call? Do you have a list that you practice and rehearse of engaging questions to get people to lower those walls and be able to talk about them? Because everybody knows that the people, they want to talk about their business. They're proud of their business. They're passionate about their the business. So what questions do you have to incite that type of conversation when you do get in front of the COI? Secondly, are you going in timid with a gatekeeper, or are you urgent, deliberate, and intentional? And we're going to talk the way that you would do that as well. Are you formulating weekly agendas, that you can use as a reference point that is plan A for the day and for the week? This was something that Sean implemented and that I carried over, the weekly agendas and daily planners, and I adopted that mentality that if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. But I want Sean to expand a little bit on the weekly agendas and why they're so important.
Yeah, so the weekly agenda, and I put a poll up that kind of relates to this, is do you currently have a top 10 or top 25 list? And what I used whenever I hired somebody in the interview process, I made them put together 25 targets minimum that they could get myself or the owner of the company in front of in the first 30, 60 days of employment. The benefit of this is we actually have a list we're working off of that we know is outsourcing or sourcing restoration type work. But what's the strategy? When I go through that list, I'm asking questions in a weekly agenda. I would send out as simple as an email, and then we review it in our weekly team meeting in minutes, so you're not bogging down a lot of time and busy work. But it could be as simple as me pulling up that top 25 list and going, hey, Eddie, have you talked to Bank of Oklahoma this week? Have you talked to Reesers Corporation? Have you talked to so-and-so? What have you learned about them? Who are they currently using for the restoration services? So many questions. There's hundreds of questions that you can put on a sheet that you can start asking people. And we probably will do a webinar follow-up, Eddie. I was just thinking about this on the, maybe the top 25, 30 questions you can be asking in the field, and then make a free guide that goes with that webinar. So that might probably be the next topic of the next webinar. But, looking at the poll results, it's kind of an equal split. Many of you have created one, but you don't look at it daily. These were the lifeblood of our operation day in and day out. We were always focused on those top target lists. Those target lists became top 10, top 25, top 50, top 100. So at some point you have 100 contacts that you're really saturating, especially on the commercial side. A third of you said, I have it in front of me right now. And it's funny because when we do consulting calls like this one-on-one, a lot of times we ask questions like, who's the COO? Who's the CFO? Who's all these different positions, and they don't have answers for that. That's a problem. If you can't answer all the questions, who they're doing, when their last loss was, these are critical questions that you need to know. And if not, you're wasting your time if you're just handing out cookies and brochures and business cards. And then another good percentage of you said, no, I haven't created one. And I can tell you right now, the best thing you can do is to create a target list. Every business I've been a part of, we create target lists. Right now, you go to our office, we have a whiteboard full of target lists on the digital marketing side, and all the other businesses that we have target lists of people we're trying to close. So that weekly agenda is really just about creating accountability to those lists so you can follow up, whether you're an owner, a manager, or just a sales rep on this call. Even if you don't have a manager that does that, create your own agenda and give yourself some type of formal report to the owner of your business so you can prove your worth. The biggest thing is if you can't articulate ROI and what you're doing to achieve revenue growth, you're bleeding your organization. It's very important when you put these systems and steps in the process. It makes the organization see your value and what you're working towards until that revenue comes in. When I took over sales, there was no reporting. That reporting is what showed the owner when we were hiring 6, 7 business development salespeople, the value of what we were doing and how we were building it. And then when the numbers came in, we kind of match everything up very clearly, because when they are building those in-depth relationships, those clients are calling directly. They're asking for you by name. The worst thing to say is when they call the office, oh, I spoke to so-and-so, I don't remember their name, but they told me to give you a call. There's no relationship there. So that's really where the target list kind of builds depth to get you to that next level.
Right. We did get a question from Lisa Browning. It said, would you guys be willing to share a list of those questions to ask when talking to the top 25? Absolutely. Now let's top 10 should be people that you can do business with right now. Your top 25 is going to be your wish list. So there's going to be rotation that's going to happen if you're actively working. Your top 10, top 25s may roll up. And it's something that you should be looking at monthly and quarterly so that you understand where you are in relation.
Yeah, and I think what Lisa's asking is
I
questions
think
that we asked.
probably one, send a list of those questions.
Yeah, let me see
Go
if I
ahead,
have
Sean.
one real quick. I'm going to pull it up. Um, so I have a COI question list. I'm going to go ahead and share it real quick. This is one that we use with a lot of serve pros. I'm going to go ahead and put it up, and it is something I could send out to you guys, but I do think we are going to do a webinar on this because it's such a popular topic. But Eddie, I'm going to go ahead and share this real quick because I think this would be really valuable for them to see. And if you guys are interested, I can send this out after. This is an older sheet that we had for, again, we were consulting with one of our Serve Pro clients. But here it starts out with some of the general questions, like, have you heard of Serve Pro or your company? And some of you on this webinar are independent or own a different franchise brand. Do you know all that my company does? Who do you currently use for your restoration needs? 3 basic questions just to cover if they even know who you are and what your capabilities are. Storytelling questions, huge opportunity. Imagine you walk into this building tomorrow and there's 6 inches of water standing. What would you do? You start asking that to different COIs, different gatekeepers. They're like, well, I would call so-and-so. I would call our maintenance manager. I would call the owner. I would call the CFO. You have to ask those types of questions. And then we kind of break it down into like agents and property managers. Like, what type of policies do you write? If you are calling on insurance agents and they do not write homeowners and commercial structure property insurance, you are wasting your time. I have met so many reps that call on auto insurance only clients because they're an insurance company and waste years of route and time because of that. Do you write commercial policies? That's a sets up to talking about emergency preparedness. What if we could help lower your loss ratio? I mean, all these types of questions that pertain to their business will get them talking. Property manager, do you have an emergency plan in place? Do you have digital backup of that information? When is the last water damage or fire damage you experienced? Who do you currently use for water and fire damage? Same thing with churches. How long are you prepared to have a church closed down if there's a catastrophic event? A lot of churches are now dealing with this because of the whole COVID-19, and now they're starting to open. What's the cleaning protocol look like that? Same thing for adjusters, asking them simple questions like, what's important to you when working with a restoration company? They will tell you because they have a lot of frustrations. It could be documentation, it could be communication, it could be many different things. And it just goes down into firefighters and different commercials and things like that. So these are some of the basic questions. If it is something you would like us to send out, we will send it out with the replay, and I can send this list out for you guys to look at if that would be.
We're getting a ton of we're getting a ton of questions asking if we can send it out. So we will send this out along with the slide deck. And like I said, this was created for, whenever we're consulting with Serve Pros. So just replace it with your company name is really all you have to do. So we will make sure that we send that out. So I know we spent a lot of time covering that, but also too, I want you to understand how it coincides with your weekly agendas and things like that. So let's talk about the what, when, where, and why, or what, when, where, why, and how to effectively pre-call plan. What is pre-call? What it for? Whenever you're setting up the people that you're going to strategically target for that day or that week, I always took the night before and did research on every one of the people that I was going to go see. Who the center of influence or the CEO of the problem. Let me explain the CEO of the problem just real quickly. If you were to go do a loss on Walmart Corporation, unless it was at the corporate headquarters, and nobody by the last name of Walton is going to show up and sign your work authorization. They have appointed people to handle that problem. So everybody always wants to start at the top. And that's strategy if you know what questions to ask, but it is important that you eventually find who the CEO of the problem is, the person that's going to sign your $1 million check, the person that's going to be ultimately responsible for all the intricacies of the loss. So it may not be the CEO. It may not be the COO. It may be a director of facilities. It may be a risk manager, but it's important to know that you are presenting ultimately to the right person. You do it. I always found that it was best to do it the night before. That way it was fresh on my mind. I was taking notes, was really walking in armed to the teeth on needed to be able to go in there. And you can do it on the fly though when you become really good at it. Say for example, you have your quote unquote route planned and there's a business that you didn't know was there. Take 5-10 minutes before you walk business to research LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, the company website, you know, county assessor if you're needing to know what the total square footage footprint of the office is, you know, things like that, and maybe make a couple phone calls if you think that there's somebody that you may know that may be plugged into that organization, so that you can walk in with a good amount of information and engaging questions to be able to ask to incite conversation. Where to do this, the pre-call planning. I encourage you, get away from distractions. You really need to be dialed in. This, in my opinion, is one of the single most important parts of the sales process. What you know about the company is going to allow you to ask questions about the company and open up dialogue. So segregate yourself away from interruption so that you can be the detective that you need to be for success. Why do you do it? The more you know about your prospective client, the better first impression you are going to make. If you walk into the Gatekeeper and you don't know anything about their organization, why would I want to do business with somebody that didn't care enough to want to know anything about me? And that's really where today's cold calling has changed. It has become that. So it proves to them that you're not just a blip on the radar or a target, but you care enough about the business that you want to know their business intimately. Utilize the company's website, social media platforms like LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, organizations that they may be involved in, like Chamber of Commerce, BNI, the Hotel and Lodging Association, IFMA, BOMA, you know, any of those kinds of things, as well as referral sources from anybody that know people who work there. So that it is, I want you guys to understand, that's why we're spending a lot of time on this. This can make or break your cold calls and differentiate you from the competition. So the 6 steps that you have for effective pre-call planning: number 1, research your prospect. Number 2, intimately know your prospect's competitors. Okay, you know, you want to say, I'm going to be able to provide you a service that, say, for example, it's a grocery store chain, it's Research Corporation, and we have a Winco. Be like, look, I have resources to be able to keep in during a community-wide event to where Winco down the street is going to be closed. Okay. Number 3, know the objective for the call. Know what you want to accomplish. We're going to talk about this in the slides coming up about micro goals that you're going to set for each cold call. Plan your questions. These things should be rehearsed. You should have them written down. You should role play these things so that you're prepared. You're not trying to come up with stuff on the fly. You're going to anticipate objections. I'm a huge advocate of this. I try to get my objections on the table early. So let me ask you a question, Mr. Smith. Do you currently have the restoration company? Yes, I do. Well, that shuts most people down. To me, that's encouraging. No, fantastic. I'm glad that you care enough about your business that you've taken the steps to have a relationship in place. You're way ahead of the game. Most people don't do that, Mr. Smith. Now I'm stroking his ego. Tell me about a loss that you've had, and what would you have changed with your current provider? What would you have done differently or wish they would have done differently? Now I'm planting seeds of dissension without maligning the competition. Now I'm creating doubt in his mind by that question. Don't over prepare. If you go in so rehearsed and scripted, you're going to turn them off. People want to deal with people. They don't want to deal with a process. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about gatekeepers. And I'm moving this along because we did spend a lot of time on that couple slides back. Everybody hates them. Terrifying, to be real honest, because they make or break whether or not you get to the person that you need to talk to. You need to walk in, you need to smile, you need to be personable, and you need to empower the gatekeeper. A lot of people don't take the time to stroke that person's ego, but remember, they have vertical influence. So what's the vertical and horizontal influence? Well, that person, if you're rude to them, can move it up the chain of command that, hey, this person from this restoration company came in and was rude to me. I wouldn't do business with them. Okay. Horizontal influence is peer-to-peer. Okay. So understand that the vertical influence for the gatekeeper can make or break you, which is why you don't want to be rude to them. But you also, too, want to make sure that you're urgent, deliberate, and intentional. So what do I mean by that? Well, here is going to be 99% of the people that I've rode with in the field over the past few years. Here is their pitch. They walk in branded. They have their business card and their literature or their gift in their hands, and they walk up to the gatekeeper and say, "Hi, my name is so-and-so with ABC Restoration. I need to speak to your facilities manager or to the person in charge." And they stop. Here are the problems with that. You have just waved your white flag of surrender to the gatekeeper by walking in with your business card or your literature in your hand. That is a visual representation that says you have no confidence that you're going to get any farther than that. That should be the last thing you reach for. Oh, by the way, I need to leave you my business card. Okay. So secondly, walking in without a name is an automatic red flag for that gatekeeper to say, there, you are coming unannounced. You have no idea who you need to talk to because you didn't care enough to research, and you're trying to sell them something, and it is their job to run you out of the building. If you change that to walk in and say, "Hi, how are you doing today? It looks like you're the glue that's keeping everything together. Tell you what, I need to speak with Bob. He's the director of facilities. Can you get him, please?" Now you have changed. He or she may not let you get to Bob, but I can almost guarantee you one of two things is going to happen. Your contact is either going to have her pick up the phone and call and see if Bob's available, or the next question is going to be, is Bob expecting you? I wouldn't say that he's not, and I don't really want to take up a bunch of his time because I did come unannounced. I just need to make a warm introduction. We connected on LinkedIn, or I had come in a couple weeks ago and told him that I would follow up, and I just need to touch base with him real quick so that I can set a definitive time to meet with him. I need to be very respectful of his time. Have a reason why you need to talk to them. And in the event that they say, you know what, he's in a meeting or you're not going to be able to get to him, then at that point you need to set a definitive follow-up time and leave with his information. So, well, coming unannounced probably isn't the way to get him. Tell you what do you have his business card or his email address, and I'll set up an email with him that way, or set up a meeting with him that way. So if you will set the tone, there is an 80-20 rule that 80% of the people are sheep, 20% of the people are leaders. I really personally believe it's more 95-5. I really don't see 20% of the population being true leaders. You can lead and have that person follow the path you take them down by being urgent and deliberate and intentional. It really does make a difference. And I've proven this time and time again. Walked back into the same facility 5 minutes after the restoration person. I watched them, critique them, and got everything that I needed and came back out with it and told them how I did it. So there is a difference in being able to do this. Goal setting for your cold call. I think this is important. Sean was somebody that really kind of introduced this to. I had always done it, but not to the level that he had wanted, and it was a great learning experience for me. So I'm going to give Sean the floor on this deal, and then kind of expand on it a little bit about what it means to have micro goals for a cold call.
Yeah, so with micro goals, it's as simple when you get into that weekly agenda is on Monday. I like to kind of set the tone, like whether you're using a planner, like I use Clever Fox, which is a daily planner that I'm kind of showing with my background, throwing off a little bit. But, every day when I go through my day and my week, it has today's main goals, today's priorities, to-do list. You can rate your productivity. It has a weekly review to kind of manage like your goals. At the beginning of every week, it has like your weekly goals and things like that. So I think it's very important to create those micro goals. So if your goal is to sell $1 million in restoration, you got to break that down to $250,000 a quarter. What does that equal per month? What does that equal per day, per week? So you can kind of track your progress as you go. So you're not waiting to that last minute and trying to go all out and above to get that one big job to meet your goal. How do you keep consistent revenue flowing? By activating your prospects and your target. So when there's big jobs come in, it's like gravy, and you're like, oh man, it's awesome. I just met my quarterly goal and I've already sold all these other things as well. But action and activity is what's going to contribute to those micro goals. If you need to talk to people on your 25 list, you need to be asking hundreds of questions to get to that point with them. And you need to track it. You need to write them down. You need to make them visible. If you don't make them visible, you're going to fall behind and you're going to be lost and you're going to be cluttered. So it's very important that you have a visual representation of that target list, the questions, the documentation, and CRM tool. If you're not using a CRM tool or your company doesn't have one for you, you need to get one. There's some free options out there, but there's a lot of cost-efficient options for $10, $15 a month where you can put that data and that information in there. So, you know, if you're not setting those goals and not following up with those goals, you will get lost along the way, but it's very important to keep those visible and yourself constantly reminded of those as well.
Absolutely. So whenever also too, you're setting micro goals for the actual cold call itself. You know, one of the thing is what do you truly want to accomplish? Is it right now, I just want to get past the gatekeeper and have a warm introduction to the COI? Am I really wanting to get into some in-depth conversation about what their current pain points are within the organization? Is it really just more intro? Or are you going to ask for the business? You know, but ultimately you want to operate on a 30-70 rule. When you walk in with those list of questions, you only want to talk about 30% of the time, asking engaging, insightful information questions that are going to allow them to elaborate and expand on things, not yes and no questions where they feel like you're you're playing 20 questions with them. So, you know, things like if you establish what their pain points are. Tell me, you said that you currently don't have a relationship right now with their restoration company. So if you were to have something catastrophic happen, say, for example, it's a storm event that rips the roof off the place, what would keep you up at night about that? I mean, I know you're responsible for a lot of employees, but tell me what terrifies you about potentially having to shut this business down, and then just shut up and listen. And really truthfully, silence can be your biggest friend in a cold call, because if you've got eye contact and actively engaged in what they say, you can pick your spot and say, you know what, you talked about this one point about, you know, business continuity, and I have this tool called an ERP. Could you expand a little more on what your current business continuity planning is? Now they know you're engaged in the conversation because you're asking them to expand on a point they've already made. And you know what? They're going to. They're going to continue to talk. And by the time it's done, you may not have to ask for the business. They may have closed themselves based on the information themselves have provided you. And that's the way that you need to ask questions that are going to get them to back themselves into a corner and close themselves. And also, too, make sure that you're getting objections on the table early. What would prevent you from having a relationship with a restoration company like mine? You know, what kind of fears would you have about establishing a relationship with somebody or leaving the current relationship that you have? You know, get your objections on the table early. If you know what they're easy to overcome. So most people shy away from. They don't want to deal with negativity. As salespeople, 90% of our day or more is negative. So we have to be very thick-skinned, understand it's not personal, that it's just business, and be able to address objections with great education and differentiation between you and your competitors that are going to pique their interest. So let's look at what the flow of the initial meeting should look like. As we said, you know, you're going to set micro goals. You're going to know what you want to accomplish in that initial meeting. I need you guys to understand that perfect practice makes perfect execution. So if you practice your talking points, you know what you're going to do. You're still going to have people who are going to throw curveballs, and that's okay, but your ability to think on your feet, be that subject matter expert, is going to be what wins them. Make sure you're actively taking notes, that you are engaged, that they see you taking notes about what they're talking about. That implies that they are important to you. So make sure that you understand that. We talked about the 30-70 rule. Make sure that you talk 30% of the time to allow you to listen 70% of the time. Fully understand their pain points. If you're not really understanding, don't just assume. We understand what happens when we assume. You want to make sure that if you need clarification, use phrases like, okay, Mr. Smith, if I'm understanding what you said correctly, I believe what you meant was this. Am I correct? Okay. He may or she may have a completely different angle that they were talking about. So it's very important that you're both on the same page. You also, too, if things happen too easy, there's something wrong. And we all know that in sales. If somebody just rolls over and they're a yes man, chances are they weren't the person that could make that decision, or they're just, that is the flight aspect. They're just trying to say whatever it takes to get you out of the meeting. So make sure that you understand the objections. Have a list of top 10 most common objections that you have rehearsed and ready. You want to leave knowing that they, whether or not they have an existing relationship with a company that does business like yours, set a date for a second meeting. Most of the time, guys, you are in restoration, you are not selling anything unless this is a priority response or an immediate gratification revenue opportunity, like vent hood cleanings, structural cleanings, carpet cleanings, air duct cleanings, things like that. So you are building relationships. So you need to set a date and a time for a second meeting, because you need to continue the relationship. And then always send out a follow-up email thanking them for their time. Do it immediately. Do it as soon as you get to your car. Send a follow-up email to them going, I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to speak with me today, because now you're trying to be memorable. You're trying to make sure that you are staying presence of mind, because we have to be memorable enough and different enough from the competition that they remember you when it hits the fan. And that is the most important part. Were you memorable enough that your presence of mind when something finally does happen? So if it doesn't go as planned, we've all encountered this. We walk into a meeting thinking we're going to kill it. It's going to be a slam dunk, and you leave with your tail between your legs. And it's happened to me. It's happened to everyone. Make sure that you find someone that you trust, either a peer or your manager or even the owner. You can role play that scenario with right then in the car before you leave, to find out what areas of opportunity you may have missed, what you may have overplayed. Maybe you asked for the business too soon. Maybe you didn't educate the consumer enough to be able to make a buying decision. So call and find out, because they're outside the fire, so they're going to see things a little bit different than the way you perceived them. But remember that iron sharpens iron. If you're not learning, you're not growing. And that is important. I had my peers and my mentors that I always, if I walked out and didn't do well, I made sure that I called them and said, hey, I really thought this was going to go good, and I missed something. I need to go back through this while it's fresh on my mind. Tell me what I missed. Tell me what you would have done differently. And remember, we got to be smart, hungry, and humble. And the humble aspect is to say, I need some help, because we all need to be better at what we're doing. Never be afraid to learn from your mistakes. Some of my biggest successes have come directly from mistakes. When you are role playing, take notes on what they thought the strong parts of that presentation were and the weak parts of the presentation, so that you can expand on your weaknesses. Be humble enough also too, that if you've been trying and trying and trying and you're not getting through to this person, maybe there's a personality conflict. Don't be afraid to hand it off to one of your peers. Do some trading and have these open conversations in your weekly sales meeting going, I've been trying to get into ABC grocery store for 3 months now, and I just can't crack that nut. So I'm going to hand it off to you. You have anything like that you've had problems with, and maybe we can do it, because ultimately it is your company's relationship, not yours, and you're out best for the company. I had to do that with someone. I had a massive property management company that, I just wasn't clicking, and one of my business development people, I was on vacation, hit it off famously with them, and I transitioned it all over to him, because I knew it was going to be better for the company. And my boss pulled me in and said, that was one of the most unselfish things I have ever seen. And as a leader, he said, I'm really impressed about the fact that you were humble enough to be able to do that. That's a big relationship. And I said, it's not about me, it's about us. And, you adopt that mentality, and you know what, it paid dividends for me. There were things that he couldn't win that I could, and we had great synergy between the sales team, because we operated on those principalities, being smart, hungry, and humble. And then maybe it's ones that you can crack that nut, you just can't. Don't give up, and keep going back until you win. I used to use this line all the time. Would you like to be 5 years younger? Okay, sure. I'd love to be 5 years younger. Why'd you ask me that? It's like, because somewhere in the next 5 years, we're going to do business and we might as well do it now. You know, I'm going to be relentless because I'm passionate about the fact that the services or products that I'm providing you are so superior to anyone else that I'm doing you a disservice if we're not doing business together. If I give up on them, then I can't honestly say that I'm passionate about that. Because I don't believe that myself. If I'm willing to give up, I'm going to keep pushing until I get it. And you know, whether you're giving you objections, whether they're telling you no, be tenacious, because tenacity will win. You will eventually get it. It took me 5 years to win a relationship with this massive hotel, and I finally found a way in, and I won that relationship, but I never gave up on it. So, guys, this is it on cold calling. It is really truth about confidence. It is about urgency, deliberation, being deliberate, being intentional, but more importantly, stop doing the same things over and over and over again, expecting them to work. Be creative in your approach. If you know, and I say this all the time, because you walk up to the front door and that front door is locked doesn't mean the third story window is. And how are you going to be creative enough to find some way to get up to that third story window and sneak your way in? So I want to open this up for questions, because we had a lot of people that were asking about getting questions for cold calling, things like that. I also want to know circumstances that you're having problems overcoming, and let's table and find ways to win collectively, peer to peer. Sean, you got anything you wanted to expand on?
No, that hit the nail on the head for sure. We're getting a lot of questions, so I want to make sure we leave plenty of time for that as well. You want to start reading some of them? If you have questions, put them in the chat box, the Q&A box. But Eddie, you can go ahead and.
So I had one that asked if I did 3 to 5 million, which is exactly what I did a year. In 4 years' time, I sold over $12 million in a town of 460,000 people. They asked how much should I earn. We set up a commission structure. First off, I don't believe that you should ever cap a salesperson. If you have a cap, that's all I'm going to give you. You know, because I'm not out, you know, I am out for the benefit of the company, but I'm not out to make the company rich. I'm out to be successful myself. What the commission structure that I found was really, really good was one that Sean had implemented, and I carried it through. And whenever I became the director and Sean went on to start tier level, was that the base salary, first off, if you are a tried and true sales professional, you've got a really big track record for success. You are rolling the dice in restoration. We all know that in restoration that it is a very dynamic and unique culture. And because somebody was good selling widgets does not mean they can sell this. So you are rolling this on what that is, but you're not going to get somebody, and I'm not bragging, I'm just saying you're not going to get somebody like me for $35,000 a year. It's not going to happen because one, I have to wait for things to happen, so I have to be able to cover my bills. But also two, the questions that whenever you're interviewing should be from the interviewee should be more geared along how much can I make, you know. So I want you guys to understand that having a lower base salary is not necessary. I wanted to keep my salespeople hungry, if that makes sense. I didn't want them to be comfortable. So which meant that they were going to go out and get after trying to cultivate new business. So salary commensurate with experience, enough to keep them hungry. And then we worked off of a commission structure that was 0 to 40,000 collected in a month was 3%, 40 to 80,000 collected in a month was 4%. Anything above $80,000 collected in a month was 5% with no cap. So that's the way we did it. We'd be happy to send that out if you guys want that, you know, to be able to do that. Can you recommend a software package that might help with prospect development follow-up, especially one that works across all platforms? Sean, you're the CRM guru. You know a lot of these. We've been looking at one called Pipedrive that is pretty amazing.
Yeah,
HubSpot, Insightly.
I like Insightly, Pipedrive, and obviously Salesforce is kind of the big name out there. I really like Pipedrive, and we're looking at moving that into our system. I've been doing some of the trials with it. It's Pipedrive, Pipedrive. But just something to communicate that database. And Insightly is a low cost, efficient option as well. Most of them have an app that go with them. So, Keith, feel free to reach out to me. I can kind of explain in detail the differences between them and why I like Pipedrive right now. We've just been trialing it right now, and I really like it. But Salesforce is always going to be kind of the blanket industry standard, and everything kind of derives off of that. So, Salesforce, and there's a lot of other ones out there. You just need to find what makes sense for you. I just really like Pipedrive because it has a funnel system in there and things like that. So there's definitely a lot of things like that, depending if you're doing more e-commerce or you're doing more service-based sales, and you just need to have notes and things like that on the fly. Some of these systems will integrate when you put somebody's email in there, it'll pull in their LinkedIn and some of that information as well. Eddie, we had another comment question in the chat box. Tracy Burrow said, LinkedIn is dead for me due to unable to reach COIs direct. Contact information, many of them have not updated their profiles. What tools are best for online prospecting? I'm active in gathering testimonials, field photos, and video content. Should I consider a client webinar if it's so good? What's a good topic during this time to do?
Well, I think as restoration professionals, right now the obvious gorilla in the room is definitely COVID-19 cleaning. Why you should use a professional company that has certifications in infectious disease control versus their employees doing it. We actually did an entire webinar on that. We'd be happy to send out that link as well to anybody that's doing it, because real honestly, I signed I do some selling for other restoration professionals just over the phone, and I sold a 20 facility grocery store chain for a phone conversation with the risk manager, and said, look, and the way I closed it, said, look, here's the deal. If your employees are doing your cleanings, I'm going to advise my family and everybody that I know not to go in there and shop and be patrons in your store. I said, because they're not trained in infectious disease control. They don't have the appropriate PPE, and somebody's going to get sick just due to ignorance. And he was like, you know what, you're absolutely right. That is a lawsuit we cannot afford to incur. And please get me a price per square foot on what you guys could come in and do residual cleaning for. It is your job to educate them, but also too, what are you masters of? You're masters of emergency preparedness, risk assessment, business continuity planning, disaster planning, all of these kinds of things. You have a captive right now. I mean, heck, I went to McDonald's today to go get an iced coffee, and they still don't even have their lobbies open yet, and we're in stage 3 or 4 of reopening right now, and we still don't have major corporations that are opened up. So I think you have all kinds of topics that are available at your disposal to showcase where you are a subject matter expert. You can even get into the science of water damage, and why you use a company, and you don't want to do that yourself, because it's the water that hides that makes your building sick. So you can talk about the intricacies of that. I mean, there's so many different topics, and I think that is such a fantastic question to ask, because webinars right now are key. I'm watching, I don't know if he's on here or not, but a gentleman up in the Indiana region that did a webinar over emergency preparedness, and he had over 200 attendees on it. So, and he had them all engaged and asking open questions and things like that. So it can be done. And like I said, we've done webinars with peer level over all of this stuff, over virtual marketing, how to market in the digital age for restoration professionals. And we've done them. I don't know if we've done one over emergency preparedness, but we can get that out there on how to effectively position emergency preparedness tools and to win in that market space. So, you've got all kinds of opportunities. Shoot me an email, Tracy, and I'll get you a list of topics and even help you putting together the slide decks and stuff to be able to create interest. Sean, what else we got?
That's about it. I mean, there's a lot of good questions, but at the end of the day, it's about strategically planning, organizing their thoughts. So if you get to that level, you just have to make sure that you're staying consistent with it and following up. You're not going to see results in the first week. Give it week after week after week, and you will start to see results. I promise you, you will see dramatic improvement if you start putting together the pieces that make this all click.
You know, and the other thing too, and I mean, it is a shameless plug, you know, but Sean and I lead Restoration Sales University. That should hopefully be ramping back up in August. So I encourage you guys to stay posted, stay tuned. We have got some fantastic feedback from people that have been in the industry 20 and 30 years that said it is the single most relevant sales training for restoration professionals on the market today. You know, it is a shameless plug, but if you're wanting it more one-on-one consulting at your organization, reach out to us because we do that as well. We do consulting where we'll come up and do boot camps where we'll do a couple of days. We'll do 1 day a classroom and 2 days in the field and go sell with you side by side to identify strengths and weaknesses and see how you're overcoming things, but to watch us be able to pitch right alongside you. So that's services that we offer as well. You know, so if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, if you want a one-on-one, that poll was up there. We're not going to try to sell you anything. We are literally here to help because we believe in one restoration nation. Email either myself, Eddie@tierlevel.com, or Sean@tierlevel.com. And if you want to look for any upcoming webinars, which we try to have them weekly, and we know that we've had a lot of people that come back week after week, and we really appreciate that because it shows that we're bringing value to the restoration industry. So we appreciate that, but you can look for that at tierlevel.com/webinar. So that's all I've got, unless we have any other questions. Guys, I really appreciate you taking. Please stay safe out there and stay tuned for the next webinar. And Sean, I'll let you close.
All right, sounds good. No, guys, appreciate it. Like I said, take advantage of that one-on-one. I already saw some emails coming in, so we'll get back to you. We did have a few more questions. I just want to wrap up real quick. What planner did you say you used, Angela Meyer? It's called Clever Fox. Love the planner.
Yeah, Sean and I both use them. It's called the Clever Fox Planner. So they're fantastic for daily planners.
I mean, I use a lot of their materials. I actually just got their budget planner as well, which hard to see right here, but let me take my background off. But yeah, the budget planner, they have daily planners, weekly planners. So it's a really good option when it comes to just all kinds of planner. But Clever Fox, they give you some stickers and everything with it. So really cool stuff. A lot of you are asking on the materials. Lori Courtney at Harborough will send that over to you as well. Once a job comes in from a prospect, how much of a role would you recommend the SMR or salesperson to play throughout that process? Eddie, do you address that at all yet?
No, I hadn't addressed that, and that is a fantastic question. You can look at this one of two ways. You need to trust your production team to do what they do, so don't step on their toes, but also too, you need to inform and educate the production team and your director of production that in the event that there are problems, the first person that they're going to come to is going to be you, because you're the one that has the established relationship. I stayed involved throughout the entire process. I worked every loss that I had, and the reason being is because I needed to intimately know what was going on with that loss, so that when a problem did occur, I was going to be abreast of the situation. So I attended WIP meetings. I constantly met with the directors of production on my losses and stayed in contact with the client. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that, as long as you're not pushing your agenda versus the production team's agenda. You're just staying ahead of the situation in case problems do arise. All right. Do we have any other questions? Did we get them all addressed? All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. We will send out a recording of this along with the slide deck and the questions. And again, if you want one-on-one, don't hesitate to email us. You guys have a fantastic day.
Have a good one, guys.